Well, guys, the time has come to give our 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup knockout stage predictions. Guys, Matty G back here with you on Football with Flags. Thanks so much for joining us as always, and thank you to those of you who have liked and subscribed here recently. We certainly appreciate your support and certainly encourage anyone else that is new to the channel to do so as well. But with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get straight into this bracket and see what we've got unfolding for these knockout stages. So just to give you all an update, what we're going to do is just move left to right in terms of this bracket. So we'll go over the first four in the round of 16 on the left-hand side, show you an updated version of the bracket, then move to the right and back and forth through each round of the competition. So we'll get started with Norway and Japan, two previous champions of this competition. Norway back in 95, Japan in 2011. Guys, Norway likes to play a lot of different formations. I've noticed that with some of the recent fixtures. But one formation that stands out for me is a 4-2-3-1. I think we could certainly see them in something like this if they do wind up playing Japan in this round of 16. I think it's a comfortable formation for them, but certainly one that they can expose teams as well in terms of how well they can attack and get out on the front foot and look to create a lot of chances. As for Japan, I could certainly see them maybe playing in a 5-4-1 or a 5-3-2. Certainly very comfortable in the back with a lot of numbers, but obviously trying to get their wing backs forward, establish possession, establish tempo, and just a pace of play for themselves. As obviously, again, they're very technical, like to keep the ball, like to move it, and control the game in that way. But for me, again, guys, I just think that Norway is very hungry coming off of a poor performance last year in the Euros. Again, this is still a very good Japanese side. I'm not sure they're quite as good as what we've seen in the past in terms of 2011 and 2015. So for me right now, I've got Norway advancing to the quarterfinal. Now on to the U.S. and Italy. Obviously, the U.S. going for a three-peat. We could see this team maybe in a 4-3-3 formation. I really like that for them. We'll see if that's what they do. But for my personal preference, I feel like that's a really good formation for this side, especially going up against an Italian team. As such, we could see Italy potentially play a 4-5-1 or a 3-5-2, which is some of what they've played in some of the recent fixtures, certainly trying to overload the midfield and close off those wings. But obviously the U.S. are going to look to try and take advantage of those wings, set pieces, crosses, etc., and even the half spaces as much as they possibly can. Remember, Italy got to the quarterfinal in 2019. It's going to be a tall task to do so this time around. But again, the U.S. play with a very physical style. They like to wear down their opponent, and I really feel like they're going to be able to do that against Italy this time around. So I've got them moving to the quarterfinal. Now on to Spain and New Zealand, a very intriguing matchup if this were to be the case in the round of 16. As for New Zealand, remember, they've never made it to the knockout stages, so if they even get to this point, I think it's a fantastic job by them, with a good opportunity to at least maybe pull an upset, get Spain out of the way, and get to a quarterfinal. For those who don't remember, they played the Dutch to a fantastic game back in 2019. They still wound up losing out on that game, but still to play at such a high level against a team who wound up making it to the World Cup final is very impressive. And if they put up a performance like they did in that game once again, I think they've got a good shot at potentially beating Spain. Again, the Spain side, though, very, very hungry. Again, while there is a lot of turmoil and issues in terms of just the federation and the relationship between the players and the federation itself and their manager, I still feel that Spain are a very good team and a contender in this competition, even though we've seen up to 15 players be reluctant in terms of just how much they want to be involved with the national team, especially when we've heard reports of that training has been a waste of time, that they weren't even given any video analysis in terms of when they played England last year in the Euros and the knockout stages. But again, the Spanish side is very, very good, and their last two losses in major competitions have been to the U.S. back in the 2019 World Cup, and then England, of course, last summer. So this team has a lot of potential, and I think that they're still very hungry, despite all of this drama surrounding the federation, to potentially make a deep run in this competition. So with that being said, I do have Spain edging New Zealand and making it to the quarterfinal. Arguably one of the best potential round of 16 matchups we could see, that is Sweden versus the Netherlands. A top 10 matchup according to the FIFA rankings. Guys, remember these two met back in 2019 in the semifinals. Netherlands went on to win that game 1-0. They won't have Medina this time around. However, I do still feel like the Netherlands are very deep. They know how to use their substitutions well, and they can come in and make an impact. But as for Sweden, they don't mind being overlooked. They don't mind being the underdogs. They've come up with some fantastic results against top-tier teams in previous years as well. And certainly coming off a disappointing run in the Euros last summer, I feel like Sweden are going to be very hungry to get into this competition, not only through the group stage, but in the knockout stages, regardless who they go up against. They've certainly, I feel like, got a chip on their shoulder. They're one of the best nations to never do it, to get it done all the way. And I do feel like that this game could go all the way in terms of extra time or potentially penalties as well. But for me, guys, I've got Sweden right now edging out Holland to make it to the quarterfinals. So here's an updated look at that bracket. We've got a matchup between Norway and the United States, and then Spain advancing on to take on Sweden. So with that being said, we'll move to the right-hand side of the bracket, get those round of 16 matchups, and then move back over for the quarterfinal. Another interesting matchup in the round of 16, we've got Canada taking on China. Remember, Canada coming off that fantastic run to a gold medal in the Olympics several years back, but also looking to avenge their round of 16 exit in the 2019 World Cup. This is a physical group. They like to break out and transition when they can, and they also cycle through a number of different formations. So it'll be interesting to see how they line up potentially against this Chinese team who consistently like to stay in a 4-4-2 formation. It'll also be interesting to see if Christine Sinclair can add to her 190 goals for her country. That is, I believe, the most either men or women have ever scored for their nation. As for the Chinese, this is a very technical side, very good in possession. Probably going to be a little bit smaller than the Canadians, but still a fiery bunch. And these Steel Roses are going to look to try and upset the Canadians as best as they can. But they're going to need Wang Shuang, a great attacker for them to stay in good form throughout this entire tournament if they want to make a deep run. But for right now, guys, we've got Canada advancing to the quarterfinals. On to the next, we've got France taking on Colombia. Probably could see this French side playing in a 4-3-3. I think they were very comfortable in it, and they look good playing it as well. Remember, they've got Hervé Renard, their new manager, in charge. They've got Wendy Renard back in the lineup along with Sommer. Remember, Wendy Renard, their captain, she scored 4 goals in the last World Cup. She's obviously going to be a force to be reckoned with, not only defensively, but for the French, if they're able to take advantage of crosses, corners, set pieces, balls in the air, in dangerous areas, as well as just 50-50s. This French side can be physical as well. These two did play each other back in April, and the final was 5-2 to France, but Colombia did have a 2-0 lead in that game before the French just kind of exploded in the second half to score a handful of goals. We could see Colombia line up potentially in a 4-2-3-1. I think that that's a good formation for them. It allows them to have a good defensive structure, overload the midfield possibly if they can, but also look to counterattack when necessary if they can create a lot of turnovers. But again, I still feel like the French are maybe going to be a bit too much for this Colombian side. However, this could be a very intriguing matchup if Colombia can get up on the French again and try and maintain that lead. But we will have to wait and see. But for right now, we've got France advancing to the quarterfinal. Well, we talked about Sweden and the Netherlands. Guys, this would also be a mouth-watering matchup if we saw England and Australia take on one another in the round of 16. You're defending European champions looking to get their first ever World Cup. Meanwhile, the co-hosts trying to make a memorable run late into this knockout stage. We could see England line up in a 4-3-3, Australia potentially in a 4-4-2. Remember, these two teams did meet back in April as well. Australia wound up winning that game 2-0. They snapped England's 30-game unbeaten streak. So England obviously would be out for revenge if possible if this matchup were to unfold. England in that game outshot Australia 15-5 and had 71% possession. So again, Australia didn't see the ball very much, but the Matildas did take advantage of their opportunities when they had the chance. I think Australia will have to do well to close gaps, create turnovers, and then try and break out in transition when possible, but also maybe pressure this English side a little bit too at the right moments if they're able. But this would certainly be a big matchup. Could we see Sam Kerr come up with a huge moment for her country on their own soil and take them possibly to a quarterfinal? We'll have to wait and see. But again, I think that England maybe possess a little bit too much in this game, and I think that they maybe take better advantage of their chances than they did in April. So I've got England just slipping by the co-hosts and the Matildas to advance to the quarterfinal. Our last round of 16 matchup, we've got Brazil and Germany. This is a rematch of the 2007 World Cup final. Germany went on to win that one 2-0. We could see Germany come out in a 4-3-3 formation. As for Brazil, possibly a 4-4-2, maybe with a diamond or a flat midfield or something else. I'm not really totally sure yet. But again, remember, Marta is making her 6th World Cup appearance for Brazil. That is a fantastic feat. Not sure how much she'll contribute or even how many minutes she'll actually get, but still, it's an incredible accomplishment. These two did play back in April. Brazil went on to win that game 2-1. It was a fairly even contest in terms of shots, possession, and some other statistics. And even though Germany are currently ranked second in the FIFA World Rankings, they did have a fantastic run in the Euros last year, all the way to the final before losing to England. You can call it an upset if you want, but for right now, guys, I do have Brazil advancing to the quarterfinal. I just think that Germany maybe are a bit out of form. Not totally sure how we're going to see these guys play once the group stage comes. In terms of their friendlies, they've been a little shaky at times already. They did lose to Zambia just a couple of days ago in a friendly 3-2. Now, granted, again, that is a friendly, so sometimes you maybe don't want to read into that too much. But for me, I think that just between Marta and Brazil looking to try and make another deep run, it's been a while, that this is a great opportunity for them to do this, and especially against a team that they have fallen to before in such a high stakes matchup. So for right now, guys, I've got Brazil advancing to the quarterfinal. So here is an updated version of the bracket. Now on that right-hand side, we've got Canada taking on France, and then England versus Brazil. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get straight into these quarterfinal matchups. Starting off our quarterfinals with a matchup between Norway and the United States. Guys, I believe the last time these two played was 2015. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the last time they did play one another. Norway is one of those teams, kind of an underdog, that could give the U.S. fits. Ada Hegerberg, a former Ballon d'Or winner, she is back in the roster for Norway. She didn't get to play in the 2019 World Cup, I believe. But these two teams, I think, are pretty similar in how they like to exploit each other, how they like to attack, and just kind of find those issues within a team tactically. So I think that this game could be back and forth with a lot of good chances from both sides. Remember, Norway also did beat the U.S. back in the 2000 Olympics final. Again, that was 23 years ago, but still, you never forget your past, especially with an opportunity to play a team who is already the back-to-back champions. But for right now, guys, I do still feel like the U.S. have a little bit more in the tank and will be able to get it done, even if it requires extra time or penalties against Norway. So I've got them advancing to the semifinal. Our next quarterfinal matchup, we've got Spain taking on Sweden. Now, these two did play to a 1-1 draw back in October of 2022. Spain outshot the Swedes that day 26-16 and had 66% possession in that game as well. Spain obviously loved their possession, but it's a question of can they be clinical with their chances. As for Sweden, I don't feel like that they mind Spain having a good majority of possession in this game. It's just a matter of can they pressure at the right times, exploit them in possession, and look to counter and produce opportunities off of that, whether it be turnovers, 50-50s, what have you. But I do feel that, again, Sweden don't mind being the underdogs. They don't mind being in this idea of not having the ball as much and not really chasing the game, but letting it come to them and trying to take advantage of their opponent. And with that being said, I think that Sweden will be able to take care of some of those opportunities. I think they'll be able to turn Spain over in some key areas and convert those chances. We could see a scoreline maybe of just 1-0, 2-1, or possibly maybe even 3-2 in this one. But I do like Sweden advancing to the semifinals, beating Spain in this one. So with that being said, we've got a semifinal matchup between the United States and Sweden, and we will move on now to the right side of the bracket to take on those two contests. Now on to the right side of the bracket, our first quarterfinal is between Canada and France. France beat Canada 2-1 back on April 11th in a friendly. France outshot the Canadians in that game 13-6. However, Canada did have more possession. Both sides played in a 4-3-3. However, again, we have talked about how Canada like to move around in terms of their tactics, like to play a lot of different formations. So we'll see if they maybe line up the same way they did last time out against France once again, or if they maybe switch it up. Again, I still feel like France have to be clinical in terms of their opportunities for an aerial attack on set pieces and crosses, but they are not going to be able to bully the Canadians as much as I think they might be able to do against Colombia. Again, I think that these two teams stack up pretty well against one another. I think it'd be a very even matchup, but I think it's also going to come down to who can press each other the best. We saw some poor turnovers when these two teams played back in April, and I think whoever can do that and make the fewest amount of mistakes are able to advance out of this contest and into the semifinal. We'll see if Sinclair can come up with another magical moment for the Canadians, but for right now, I've got France advancing to the semifinals. The last quarterfinal matchup is a rematch between England and Brazil in the finalissima. We saw England and Brazil go to a 1-1 draw before penalties ensued in this matchup in Wembley, where England prevailed 4-2. England outshot Brazil that day 11-9 and had 71% possession. However, I think it's going to be a matter of, can England convert all of that possession into some really good opportunities on the attack in the final third. We're going to have to take advantage of those wide spaces, especially the touchline and the half spaces inside as well, and really just try and suffocate Brazil in their own half, not allow them to get out and break away at all and look to create turnovers, especially if we might see Brazil in a 5-3-2 compared to a 4-3-3 that we could see from England, which is what these two played the last time they were up against each other. As for Brazil, I feel like that they've just got to keep this game close. I think if England take a 1-0 lead like they did the last time out, that's fine. Remember, Brazil came back and scored in stoppage time to take it to penalties. But I think if England are able to take a 2-goal lead at some point in this game, that might be too much to come back for Brazil. And I do see something similar to that unfolding. So with that being said, I do have England advancing to the semifinal, but a great run from the Brazilians to get to the quarters. Down to our final four. It is a matchup between the United States and Sweden and a matchup between France and England. Let's get right into it. This would be an incredible matchup if it were to unfold like this. You've got the 4-time World Cup champions in the United States versus, again, maybe arguably the best to never win it all in Sweden. Guys, the U.S. beat Sweden in the 2019 group stage of the World Cup 2-0. However, Sweden came back with a dominant 3-0 performance in the Olympics against the U.S. and also beat the U.S. in the 2016 Olympics. Not to forget that either. I think that this game could go all the way down to the wire to penalties, but I think that some of the most important areas on the field are going to be the opportunity to press at the right times, set pieces, and also half spaces. Again, we talk about teams with width and being able to use that, but I think the half spaces are going to be very important. Not only being able to overload different sides, but being able to combine and look to get in on goal as best as possible. But I think it's really just going to come down to who is able to do those objectives better. But for the Swedes, they don't fear the U.S. Despite how many trophies the U.S. have, they've been able to beat them in some key moments over time in some big-time games. And with that being said, I think that we're going to see Sweden do that again to the United States, this time just on the biggest stage with the brightest lights and with an opportunity to not only beat them, but go to a World Cup final to have the shot at winning their first ever World Championship. Our next semifinal between France and England. Both sides could come out playing in a 4-3-3. I think they both have similar playing styles. They both like to keep possession. We'll see if one side is more dominant in that category or not, or if they're pretty split down the middle. But I think they're just going to have to pick and choose their battles in terms of when to press. And yes, we've talked about that with some other games before, but I think with this game, it's also going to be important of who can break down the press. Can they expose those opportunities when teams are trying to press to be able to create chances moving forward on the attack? And again, we've talked about wide spaces and half spaces. I think the fullbacks are going to be very important in this game as such, like Lucy Bronze for England, and just how they're able to overload and get numbers forward and help whip balls in or play balls into the middle to be dangerous. Again, we talked about how dangerous France can be with free kicks and corners and aerial attacks. We'll see if they're able to capitalize on those chances as well. But also, will some of the injuries that England have already obtained hurt them getting this far into the competition, or will they still be able to hang on with such a strong lineup and depth in their roster? I think this is a toss-up game. I think it could go either way. I really hope this matchup happens. We saw what an incredible matchup it was between these two teams on the men's side back in November. I think if it happens here on the women's side as well, it will be just as intriguing with so many great opportunities for both sides to score. We could see this go into extra time or penalties as well. But for me, guys, right now I've got England advancing to the World Cup final. Again, a tough decision. I wouldn't mind seeing either one of these teams make it all the way. But for right now, my gut just tells me that England will be able to advance and get to the World Cup final. All right, guys, just two more games to predict now. We've got our final and our third place match. We'll get right into it. If you're still with us at this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. We certainly appreciate your support. So with that being said, guys, let's get these two out of the way. Let's see who wins it all. straight away into this third place matchup. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one between the U.S. and France. Obviously, neither team wants to even be playing in this game at this point. But hopefully this game will be wide open. They'll be sending a lot of numbers forward, and we'll see a lot of goals, maybe 5, 6, 7. That's at least what I'm hoping for. Certainly that's what you want to see in a third place matchup, considering it's really just a consolation prize at that point. I do have the U.S. beating France, though, in that third place matchup. So with that being said, now moving on to the final between Sweden and England. These two faced off in the European semifinal last year, England dominating that game with a 4-0 victory. They outpossessed and outshot the Swedes. But these teams were kind of at different points when they met at that time. England were on a hot streak. They were clicking on all cylinders. Meanwhile, Sweden didn't have the greatest of group stages and just never really looked like themselves in this competition very much, or at least consistently. I think some of the questions that remain if these two are able to meet in this competition, or at least in this final, is one for Sweden. Are they able to continue that underdog mentality if they aren't considered the favorites? Can they take advantage of pressing? Can they take advantage of turnovers, being physical with 50-50s, and just creating as many attacking chances off of all of those opportunities as possible? Meanwhile, for England on the other side, will the injuries play a factor getting to this point, playing a 7th game in a month span? Or will the fact that they've had experience now in the European final and the Finalissima help propel them to the final step to get to the mountaintop and win a World Cup final? For me, guys, right now, I do have England being able to do so. I think this could be a fantastic final. We could see it go all the way to extra time or penalties as well. Certainly would like to see it maybe even go to extra time, maybe not penalties, but just seeing these women battle it out for 120 minutes possibly would be fantastic with a late winner. Sometime in extra time would be really cool to see. But for right now, guys, with our final predictions, I've got England defeating Sweden in the World Cup final. So there is a final look at our knockout stage predictions with the bracket totally filled out. Guys, make sure you let us know down in the comments section as well your own predictions. Be as thorough and detailed as you would like. Let us know if you agree or disagree. We love engaging with you guys and love hearing what you have to say and seeing different perspectives on this as well. This was a fun video to make. I hope you certainly enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button as well. And guys, it's just been an absolute blast. Really cannot wait for these World Cup finals to start and watch this tournament unfold and see what happens. It's going to be a great, great competition. Guys, thanks again for watching. I know I sound like a broken record, but we've got plenty more content to come your way, hopefully with not only the Women's World Cup, but other international competitions as well, along with just reviewing some recent fixtures, both for the men and women's side and different things as such. But again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Continue to watch. We've got plenty of stuff on our playlist down on the channel if you haven't already seen some of that before. But again, guys, hope you really enjoyed this video. Thanks again so much for watching. We really appreciate you tuning in and also just engaging with us with everything that we put out here. So with that being said, guys, peace out. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.